Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Skip TV. We usually see many people, many families in distress and during the tough times. And there is one organization in particular. They work on people whose families are affected by the returned citizens or people who got incarcerated. So we have Miss Anne Edenfield Sweet with us from uh, Wings for Life. Wings for Life International. I mean, she is the one. She's the executive director of the Wings for Life International. Sorry about that, and she will be talking to us about, her experiences and then how they are helping the people in the and their families in these situations. Welcome to Scoop TV, Miss Anne Edenfield Sweet. How are you today?
I'm doing great. I'm so happy to be with you today.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Can you tell us about your story and what made you to start the Wings for Life International nonprofit organization?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Um, well, um, let's see. It's a long story. I married a man who was a pilot. Um, we started working for the same airline, and we flew internationally. We flew all over the world. So we lived this really kind of magical life because we were traveling all over the world. I decided I wanted to stay home more, meaning the United States more. I got hired with Continental Airlines, which is now United Airlines, and we moved to Albuquerque, New Mexico. We both commuted out of Albuquerque to various places. My husband, anywhere from London to San Francisco to New York. He was with Air Jamaica for a while. We had a home in Jamaica. I was based in Houston, Denver, El Paso. But we called Albuquerque home. And I was home. It was August the 5th, 1986, a long time ago. And I was home with my youngest of four boys. My oldest was 7. I had a baby who had been born prematurely and was home on oxygen. I was breastfeeding him, and the phone rang, and everything in my life changed. The call was that my husband had been arrested, had been thrown down outside our real estate office in Albuquerque, had been hauled off to the local jail. I didn't even know where it was. So overnight, I ended up becoming penniless. The government seized everything that we had, everything I'd worked for my entire life, ended up with the $3.5 million IRS lien. We literally became lepers in our community. None of our neighbors in the big fancy neighborhood where we had a home came over. The boys couldn't go play with anybody. We had been a member of a church for 12 years in Albuquerque. No one from the church called. It was a very bleak time. My husband ended up signing a conspiracy to import drugs. He ended up in a federal prison at the Texas-New Mexico border. And I was home with 4 little boys, penniless, and couldn't even pay for my baby's oxygen. I ended up joining another church where the pastor ended up welcoming me in. And when my baby was 2 years old and weighed a big 10 pounds, he got off of the oxygen, and I got hired to be youth director in this church. And I knew nothing about being a youth director, but I found out about this wonderful program that's very relational. And so for the next 5 years, I was youth director in the church, loving it, making $800 a month, but I always said I was rich. I just didn't have money. And then my husband called from prison one time, and he was 6 years into his sentence. He was on a 15-year prison sentence. And he said, I'm coming home. And I ran in to tell the staff, the church staff, my husband is coming home from prison. And then the new pastor, not the man who had hired me, but the new pastor in front of the whole staff said, well, then I can no longer be your pastor. And now I had to leave that church. And now I lost my job. This was the second worst day of my life. And so I was now without a job. My husband was coming home from prison. And the first pastor had encouraged me to write a book. It's called Family Arrested, How to Survive the Incarceration of a Loved One. Because no one helps the family. Everybody wants to help the incarcerated one or the police who deal with the arrest, and they haul them off, but no one is there to help the families. So over time, I got a grant from an organization called Prison Fellowship, and they gave me a $3,000 grant we started our first Christmas party. And this was 26 years ago now. We're into our 26th year. And so we did a Christmas party, and we used the model of ministry that I used when I was youth director in the church. It's very fun and relational. So we sang together, we did crafts and activities. We dramatized Bible stories. We did a live nativity. Everybody was in some kind of costume. They were sheep, shepherds, angels, whatever. And it was just so much fun. And then, of course, we ate together. We had pizza, cookies, and punch. And of course, we gave away gifts. So that's how it all started. And then over time, my book ended up getting published. I ended up working for a publishing company that actually published the book. And after my book was done, I said, well, I'm uniquely qualified. I think I can help people. And so I started our educational program. We also call that Wings for Life, but the life stands for life skills imparted to families through education. And so I started that in 15 years ago. So for 15 years, we've been doing that educational program, and I've been doing Wings now full time for the past 15 years, since 2005. And so now we've done work. I've done work in 20 states in the United States. I've been all over India. I know you're from India. I love India. We've been all over India from one end to the other. I've done training in every prison in Kenya. I'm probably one of very few people that can say they've been to every prison in Kenya. And then I've been to a variety of prisons in Liberia. And this past year, in January 2020, we went to Liberia, and we've got a very active program going in Liberia. So our mission is transforming lives to break the generational cycle of incarceration. And that's what we do.
Very nice. So I mean, I have a question to you. It's a very nice, I mean, you're able to do, I mean, service to the families, I mean, who got affected with these incarcerations. As you said, there are many programs for the people who are in the prison, but not for the people who are, I mean, affected by that. Those are us, which is very nice of you. And what do you think, what kind of, see, we have a different image or impression about the people who are incarcerated. So what do we explain to the common people? The first time I heard about the returned citizen is at a meeting at Detroit, I mean, where the mayor came in, and he used the word called returned citizens. So I didn't understand what exactly he meant by that. But I mean, okay, by halfway through the meeting, I understood what exactly the returned citizen mean. So what kind of impression do we have? So why is it so taboo to talk to the people or hire them or help them out? So can you tell a little bit about, you've been seeing so many prisons. I would like to hear from you on this particular issue.
Yes, I'd love to share. First of all, for any listener that doesn't know that terminology, and I'm proud to say I've been able to spread that name all over the world, returning citizen. I was at a conference many, many years ago down in California. In the evenings, we were sitting around saying, we don't like the word ex-con, ex-felon, ex-prisoner. What is a term that we could come up with that is positive, that kind of is encouraging and empowering to people? And so we came up with the terminology returning citizen. And I always tell our folks, you can't be a returning citizen until you understand what a citizen is. So first I make them define what is a citizen. A citizen is somebody that's law-abiding, hardworking, contributing member to society. They are giving back. They're a good son, a good daughter, a good neighbor. And hopefully they've got a job. And if they've got a job, then they're paying taxes. They are now a returning citizen. And the tragedy in America, of course, we incarcerate more people in America than any other country in the world. And 1 in 3 adults in the United States, 1 in 3 have a criminal record that impacts employability. So you might think, well, it's not me and it's not you. Well, it's the next guy. And it is. And incarceration is so pervasive that it is estimated that, or the studies show that 1 out of every 2 Americans have an immediate family member that's been in prison or jail. 1 out of 2. And it is just, it's dragging our entire society down. Because when people become addicted to drugs, alcohol, all of these behaviors lead to illegal activity, which ends up really harming society. So working with returning citizens and their families, and another thing that's horrifying, and I have 4 boys, is that currently it's estimated that 72% of children of prisoners end up in prison in their lifetime. 72%. I mean, pretty soon we're going to be putting everybody in prison, and all the rest of the people are going to be on the law side of things, either working in incarceration, or the police officers arresting them, or probation and parole when they get out. And then nationally, in the United States, we have an 83% recidivism rate. Now, you mentioned that word recidivism. Recidivism is a return to prison. So a study came out last December in the United States. Over an 8-year time frame, a 9-year time frame, 83% of any returning citizen that got out goes back to prison. And the reason is because it's so hard for them. They've either had a hard time because of addiction, and they've maybe burned brain cells. They've destroyed family relationships. They haven't learned really how to work. They probably don't have a good education. And unless they can really turn their lives around and really get into some substantial educational programming, most of these folks don't make it. And I'm proud to say that at Wings, we have a 4% recidivism rate. So that means, first of all, that the people that come to our program want to come because they want to learn. They want to better themselves. And I've literally asked this question around the world: how many of you want a loved one that you know incarcerated? And I've asked this in every prison I've gone to anywhere in the world. I have never had a hand go up. No one wants a loved one to go to prison. But if we don't teach people, how are you not going to go to prison? How are you going to parent differently than you were parented? How are you going to provide a healthier household for your family? How are you going to strengthen your family instead of just tearing your family down and doing the same thing that your parents, your grandparents, your grandparents did, and they all ended up in prison? How do you think you're going to break that cycle? And we need to teach that. And so what we do is we teach people how to do that. We use a model that is around the world, actually. It came out of Search Institute. They've been around for over 40 years. And they've developed, they call them the 40 developmental assets. First one is family support. Second one is caring, positive communication, family communication. Third one is other caring adults. And it goes all the way through internal and external ways of building the support in your life to the 40th one, a positive view of the future. And if we can teach people how to do this, instead of just saying, well, go build family support, and people look at you, oh my gosh, I don't know what that means. But every week we give them examples and we model, how are you going to build family support? And by doing that and modeling it, they practice it week after week after week, and they learn these things. And the sad thing is that in order to cut at-risk behavior, statistically, you have to have 30 out of the 40 developmental assets. And no community in America, and public schools, middle and high schools, have the kids tested higher than 20 out of these 40 assets. So that means we have an entire country of kids at risk. That's why we have so many people going to prison. That's why the addiction rate, the early pregnancy rates, all of these problems are hitting us because we've lost the sense of family, and we've lost the sense of how do we work together as our family and teach and educate our families. And so that's what we do. We're trying to give people wings to fly for the rest of their life. But again, that life and that educational program stands for life skills. We're going to teach you the life skills imparted to families. We're going to teach the entire family, because if we don't teach mom and grandma who are raising these kids, the kids could come home and say, well, Grandma, I learned these things. But no, we have to teach Grandma too. We have to teach the entire family. So life skills imparted to families, and then through education. We're not going to just sit around and say, well, I heard and I think this. We're going to bring in the best speakers that we can that are going to educate people. We're going to educate you on best practices to cut those at-risk behaviors. And I don't know if you're familiar with ACEs. If you've heard, have you heard of ACEs, adverse childhood experiences? Is that a terminology that you're familiar with? Well, this is new research that's coming out. And what they're finding out, of course, with COVID going on, every child is going to have at least one adverse childhood experience because of COVID, and probably many more. Probably a little bit of a fear factor. Maybe hunger issues. You know, that people in America are hungry today. People around the world are hungry. So maybe there's abuse in that family. Maybe there's divorce. I mean, more than 50% of our families end up in divorce. That's an adverse childhood experience. If you've had any addictions with any relatives, or any kind of verbal abuse, sexual abuse, any of these things, these are all adverse childhood experiences. And again, if you've had these adverse childhood experiences, you're far more likely to end up in prison. And so we are working with almost everybody that comes to our program has probably 3 or 4 or more of these adverse childhood experiences. So again, we're trying to teach them these positive ways that come out of Search Institute's developmental assets, and we teach them how now are we going to break that cycle. How are we going to teach you these best practices that are going to combat and try to, we can't take away the adverse childhood experiences that anybody had in their lives. We can't take those away. But what we can do is teach you how can you deal with this in a healthier way, and how can you now be a better parent and not follow in the patterns that you had. So that's what we're trying to do in everything that we do.
Very nice programs for the families and the children and everything. Coincidentally, recently, I think I spoke to another lady from Ireland, the UK and Ireland, I mean, area. Her name is Magdalene, and she's the founder and CEO of Music Relief Foundation. They work on teenage kids in the school. I mean, especially where they don't have much family support. They do have support, but I mean, they're not strong family, like both wife and husband are together. Those kind of people, they are helping them. So probably I should be able to connect you with them, and you guys can collaborate. You can share some of your expertise with them and help them incorporate all these things in their program. That's very nice. That's I'll share offline.
Absolutely. I'm happy to share with anybody anywhere in the world, because these are universal issues. These are not issues that are unique to the United States or to any particular country. We have incarceration. We have poor people all over the world. We have uneducated people everywhere, and everybody wants something better for their children and their grandchildren, and that's what we're trying to teach.
Very nice. I mean, the numbers what you have mentioned about, I mean, the number of people going back to the jail and are going back to the, are getting addicted again, and then those kind of things are very, mind-boggling. I mean, like it's kind of troubling, I would say. So, so what is that specifically your organization is doing to the family? You mentioned that you would like to help the families who got affected with these kind of incarcerations. So what programs do you have for the families? Can you elaborate a little more, please?
We do 2 primary programs. Prior to COVID, we used to do a Monday night meeting that involved a dinner. So first we taught everybody as they came in how to set the table. So we would teach the manners and how do you set a proper table. So then they could go get a job in a restaurant or whatever. Then we would have some people help in the kitchen and help prepare the food. We serve family style food. We had a kitchen coordinator, but everybody would go in and get desserts ready and put them on plates and make salads and learn how to chop things and whatever. Then prior to dinner, if we had time left over, and we usually did, people like to come early, then we would do what I would call mixers. So they would get to know each other. And so I'd give them something to talk about. So what did you do over the weekend? Or share something positive you're going to do for Christmas, or, whatever. It could be anything. Your favorite book to read, or what do you want to do when you grow up? If I gave you a ticket to go anywhere in the world, where would you go? Anything silly to get people to talk. So they would go talk to each other. And then we would bring them back together, and then we would say, well, what did your new friend share about what your new friend just said? Because it teaches them the social skills of how are they going to talk. Then we would gather together around the dinner table. We would teach dining manners. I told you I used to work for the airlines. I always say people in first class, where did they learn manners? Someone taught them manners. So we teach manners, and people love that. That's one of their favorite things about us, because most people don't know manners. And so we teach them all these manners, and they just think it's just great. So we eat together, and then we give them a placemat with things to talk about. So we give them questions pertaining to the topic of the night. And so now they sit around the table and everyone learns to talk. So see, we're modeling other caring adults. We're modeling positive family communication. We're modeling spending time together as a family, and how can you do it, and how easy it is, sit together around a table. Then we would have someone be picked as a table server. They would clear the table while everyone else continues to talk. And then the children and the teens would have an after dinner program, perhaps some karate lessons, maybe art classes, maybe beading classes, ukulele classes, whatever our volunteers want to teach them. And then we would bring in speakers. And over a course of a month, we try to address jobs, money, parenting, and issues unique to incarceration. So we bring in the very best speakers that we could find. Maybe they're wardens in prisons, head of probation and parole. Maybe they're bankers. Maybe they're parenting experts, addiction experts, people to talk about tattoos and tattoo removal, and anything that we could think of that is going to educate our families. So that would be our typical meeting. That would be our typical educational WFL Wings for Life educational meeting. Now, of course, we can't do that. So now we have Zoom programming. So actually, we had a live person calling in from Brussels a couple weeks ago. I couldn't believe, I thought, your name looks unusual and I don't think I recognized you. And sure enough, he came on and with this very heavy French accent, but did speak wonderful English. And he was from Brussels. And our program over in Liberia, they're using our tape program. So anyone can join us now free through Zoom or live Facebook. And all of those programs are going on our website. We know that our big jail in Albuquerque, they are putting all of our programs on the tablets for the inmates. So when they're inside the prisons, they can actually now review and see all of our programming. And our New Mexico Corrections Department is trying to figure out a way how we can actually have live Zoom going into the prison, so we can actually be talking to prison populations and they can be part of this. And then with Zoom, of course, we're not there together, but we go into breakout rooms. And so then we give them topics to talk about after they've heard the speaker. Then they come back and then they share. So we've got that opportunity. And then the other main big program that we do is we do family days in our prisons. And that's where I've done work in 20 states. We go into a prison. The inmate gets to invite the family, the children, the loved ones that are going to be there. And then we go in, and this is the faith-based program that we do. So we sing together. If there's an inmate band, we have the inmate band lead the singing. But everybody has to sing. We don't want it to be an entertainment and everybody watch the band. So we all sing, and I teach them a couple songs that are fun and get everybody involved. Then we will dramatize a Bible story, and everybody puts on, you can't wear costumes into a prison, but you can tear up old sheets. So we tear up old sheets, and you become disciples and sheep and shepherds and angels and seeds and birds of the air and whatever we need. Noah and the ark. I mean, whatever it is. Everybody is part of it. And so we do that. Then we do crafts and activities, and then we eat together. We are modeling, again, those 40 developmental assets. We're sharing values to strengthen the family and modeling that. And then I'm talking to the families and the inmates about ways that they can help their children avoid incarceration, which of course everybody wants. So those are our two primary programs, that WFL program, that educational program, and then our Wings Family Days, where we go into the prisons. And that's what I've done in India, and I've done them in Russia actually too, and of course then Kenya and India and Liberia. So, and then you've got an international audience. So once COVID is over, I want to go anywhere anybody wants me. So I'll be there.
Very nice. So it's a very good programs for the people and helpful programs for the families and also the inmates, as you said. I want to ask you one thing. How do you help the family to gain the confidence? I mean, once they go through this, the news and also the not having support from the people in their neighborhood. So that's important, right? I mean, we all know. I mean, we can do it, but I mean, when you have the resistance from the outside world, it will be kind of demotivating, and you lose your confidence and your self-esteem, especially. So with these kind of things, those are, I feel those are important things first to get, and then go back and do the work. So what do you say to boost those values in these families?
Thank you for asking that, because incarceration is extremely difficult. The person that gets arrested gets hauled off, and they are in the system. They don't have to worry about where the next meal comes from, where they're going to sleep that night, how they're going to get there. Did the car break down? No, they will be taken care of. But no one is there to help the families, and it is devastating. It is extremely difficult. And so what I try to do is just try to be an encouraging bright light for our families. I have talked to people literally all over the world. That's why I wrote the book, Family Arrested, How to Survive the Incarceration of a Loved One. And some people have said that just reading a book, realizing they aren't alone, you know, when somebody gets arrested, you don't go around and say, oh, and somebody said, well, where is your husband today? Oh, well, he's in prison. Yes, he just got hauled off to prison for 15 years. That's not the kind of thing that you're going to talk to anybody about. And so it's very embarrassing. It's the kind of thing you want to hide. You're ashamed of it. And when people think about somebody in prison, they kind of lump all prisoners together. They're all drug dealers. They're all drug addicts. They're sex offenders. They're thieves. They're bank robbers. They chop people up and bury body pieces all over. They lump that word prisoner all together. And what happens for families of prisoners is they think of us that same way. So, for instance, that first church, I'm sure they didn't know what to do with me. Oh my gosh, how am I going to talk to this lady? And when somebody dies, it's hard enough to talk to somebody when somebody dies. A death in the family is a very difficult thing to talk about in a healthy way. Well, incarceration, no one knows what to say. So they don't say anything. So as the wife of, I'm sure a lot of those people probably did want to reach out to me, but I felt like no one wanted to be near me, that I was this leper that was just the worst leper in the world, and no one wanted to be around me. And so I know I'm not alone. I've talked to thousands of families over the years, hundreds of thousands probably. And we all feel this way, that no one wants to be around us. And so we need to teach people that that is not us. That we are our own person, especially for children. Children or prisoners oftentimes take that burden on too. I wanted a bike, and now Daddy went to prison, and because I wanted that bike, which had nothing to do with Daddy going to prison, but the little child takes on that blame. We see all the movies and all the pictures and hear all the horror stories about prison, and we just conjure up the very worst images in the world. And actually, I've seen some pretty nasty prisons around the world, but certainly the prisons in the United States, at least they're going to basically keep people safe. Yes, there are always abuses and things like that taking place in any facility where other human beings are in charge of them. But basically, they are going to get 3 meals a day, and they are going to have some heat, and they are going to have a bed. Now, it might not be the bed you want, and you might maybe not the toilet you want, but you've got something. But for the families, it's very, very difficult. And that's why oftentimes the children of prisoners end up incarcerated themselves. They, excuse me for a second here. Perhaps they get bullied at school.
Okay.
You know, somebody says, where is your dad? I heard your dad's in prison. Well, my dad's a good guy. And the next thing you know, there's a fight. And with the school principal and the teacher, who do they discover is fighting? The child of the prisoner. Well, oftentimes then they get classified as the bully, and then they start to skip school or get kicked out of school or suspended from school for a little bit. And they're the ones that really need the schooling the most and need the most support in the world. So what we're trying to do is build that awareness to be able to help these children so they can avoid this in the first place. They don't turn to drugs. They don't turn to illegal behaviors. They don't turn to early sexuality, and they can continue with their education and better their lives. So incarceration is a very difficult thing, and the stigmas attached are difficult. And for people that are not directly affected by it, just be kind, be open, talk to somebody, ask how they are doing. You don't need to ask about how is the prison life and all the nitty gritty gory. Nobody wants to share about that. But how are you doing? How can I help you? Can I take your kids? Can we have a play day prior to COVID here and after COVID? Can I come fix a meal for you? What can I do to help you? That's the best thing that somebody could do.
It's very nice. Okay, it's good. And another thing is, I mean, in the US, I mean, we have seen, I mean, most of these cases are in the inner cities. So is there anything to do with a specific group of people, or do you see in other parts of the town store?
Well, incarceration, unfortunately, it's inner city, it's small town, it is everywhere because drugs are everywhere. And where there are drugs, there is going to be a need to feed the need of that drug. And it's such an expensive thing that then that leads to the thievery and it leads to everything else. And so incarceration, you tend to hear about it more in the inner cities, but it doesn't matter any part of town. The best part of town in Albuquerque, believe me, we lived in the best part of town when my husband was an airline captain, and here he was. So it impacts all walks of life. Doesn't matter what part of the city, the community you live in. Of course, it's more prevalent in areas of where there's poverty. Typically, people of color tend to be on the lower income and educational scale, and so that tends to be a huge problem. And so that's why we're trying to work so closely and so carefully with all of the leaders in all of these different communities to try to help and to educate. And actually, the good news with COVID is now that with the Zoom and the live Facebook and all of these things, that we can take our programming, and now where you had to be sitting in Albuquerque, New Mexico at 6 o'clock in the evening on a Monday night, you can now be anywhere in the world and you can pick up that programming anytime, any place, anywhere, and utilize that program and make it work for your community. All it takes is a caring leader that says, I don't want my kids to go to prison. I want to better their lives. I want them to be able to have better education, and I want to help them. And how can I help them? And here's a program that is free, that is available to people all over the world. And we just hope people will start really utilizing this programming.
Very nice. I mean, good. I mean, you're helping out many families and many people around the world. That's very nice. And fundamental, another thing what I see is, I mean, when you have usually when we are under stress, let it be financial stress, or let it be emotional stress, or stress in the relationships, those things, I mean, our mind doesn't work the way when we are normal, or when we are disciplined enough. So with these families, it will be, I think fundamentally that is another challenge is, I mean, they will not be able to stay. A caseworker can go, or a nonprofit can go and talk to them and work out a program and give them a schedule where they can work, and they come out of the problems they are in, they can come back to the regular track. But the challenge for them is sticking to the plan is not that easy. I mean, we can lay down the path, but so what kind of programs do you have for these people? Because that is the main thing. I mean, because there is no, even ourselves, I mean, people with the education and a little bit of money, I would say, it's sometimes it will be hard for us to be in a right state of mind all the time. And so for these people, and especially young guys, teenagers, it would be challenging. So if they need specific program where you can help them stay off the bad things, and be on the right
Yes,
path.
actually, we have an agreement with our juvenile probation department in our county and a county south of us, and we're hoping it'll go statewide soon, that if juvenile offenders, those that are first getting into the system, come to our program and they come 5 times, that they're going to close their case. Because we know that if we could start working with them at an early age, if we can catch them when they're just starting to tag, they just have just skipped school just enough, and they did something minor out in the community, but enough to get into juvenile probation. So if we can catch them, because see, we're not only catching them, now we're catching their caregiver, because now the caregiver knows there's something going on here with this child of mine. And they don't want them to end up in the prison system. No one wants their loved one to end up in the prison system. So everybody wants something better for them. So if they could come, now again, they have to want it. Now, if you don't want it, nothing is going to help. And it's just like somebody that's an addict. If they don't want to make change, if they don't want to get off the drugs, if they don't want to get off the alcohol, if they don't want to make that change, no one's going to do it for them. It has to be something that they want to do. But when people are determined, I'm not going to have my children follow into this pattern of incarceration, and they come to us, we are going to teach them. And we're going to teach them in a loving, kind, compassionate way. We are going to learn together. Everyone has a life story. Everybody has something that's going to benefit somebody else. Maybe it's my difficulty of what I went through when my husband went to prison, but I can help somebody else. Somebody else maybe actually did go to prison, but how did they make it when they got out? How did they get out and now they are surviving? And we bring in the returning citizens all the time to share their stories. How did they become successful? And by working together, by encouraging, by training, by educating each other with things that have worked and also things that didn't work, because sometimes we learn by our mistakes too. I certainly did. What didn't work, and by combining all of those efforts, we can start to benefit and make change and really impact the children and the adults too, because no one wants to go back to prison. I haven't met anybody that says, I just got out and I can't wait to go back. But oftentimes it's the easier lifestyle. They say, well, I'm going back. It's too hard out here. I got to work. I got to try to find a place to put a roof over my head. I got to go to the grocery store, and I got to have money to buy the food. I don't have money to buy food. And then I got to have a pan to cook the stuff in. Life is too difficult. Prison is easy. Lay in bed, get up, do what they tell you to do, go to the chow hall, get your food. It's a miserable life, but it's a mindless life. It's not anything that you have to work for. So the people that come to us are the ones that do want to make change, that are recognizing that if they don't make change, that they're either going back to prison or their children are, and they don't want that for themselves. And then by modeling, by training, by over and over repeating these things and bringing in all these speakers, people learn and they make change and they stay out and they're so proud of themselves. And we can teach them how to do it. And I lived on so little money that I am a master at how to stretch a dollar. And so I love to teach people how to really maximize that penny or that nickel or quarter. And we teach people how to do that. And by teaching that empowers them. And now they feel like they can make it. And they do. And our folks do make it.
Very nice.
Like I said, we only have a 4% recidivism rate. So we're very, very proud of that. And none of our kids that have come to our program 10 times or more, if they've been in school, they haven't turned up to be pregnant teens. They haven't dropped out of school. Not any of our kids, because they know that the people that care about them and are encouraging them. And so that's what it's all about, encouraging and training and educating.
That's very nice, very nice. Yeah, you brought another point. I mean, the teenage moms or a teenage pregnancy. I mean, again, this is another or teenage parents, I would say. It's another challenge in this specific demographic of people. Like, I mean, because they don't have anybody to take care of them or love them or give attention. So these kind of things cause them to get into the bad relationships and then and mess up their lives. So what kind of programs do you have for these people I mean, do you try to avoid, or will you kind of get into once some cases maybe you may be able to avoid, some cases you may be able to take care of once they are into the problem. So do you
Well,
have any?
it's all what I've discovered is all about educating at an early age and trying to giving them hope. You know, that 40th asset, positive view of the future. Do they have a view of the future? If they think I'm going to be just like mom or just like dad, and I'm going to prison, and uncle and grandpa and great grandpa, if that's what they're aspiring to, they're not going to do any better. But if they get the dream of I can, and we don't always be pushing college, but I can go to college, or I can be, I love cars and I can fix cars. My gosh, car repair people make a whole lot more money than I do working in the nonprofit world. I love to be a plumber. I want to be a contractor. I want to build things. I want to do things. You don't have to go to school and have a PhD to be able to do all these things, but to live a fulfilled life. So what we try to do is encourage these children right off the bat that you don't have to follow in the patterns of your family members. And most of the people, the family adults that are bringing them, are trying to encourage them. They want something better for their kids because they know that everybody in their family has gone to prison, and maybe grandma is a 40-year-old great grandma. We've got 40-year-old great grandma. So how old was she when she had her first child? And then we've got to teach her how to be a better parent, because now she's raising her great grandchildren or grandchildren, and she never even knew how to be parented in the first place. So we have to teach her. So it's this combined effort of working with the entire family and strengthening everybody and teaching them, and with modeling behaviors. How do we eat together? How do we treat each other with respect? How do we listen to one another? That's why all of the activities that we do, and of course through Zoom, you can't do all of those things, but even in a breakout room, we make sure that we give everybody time to talk in the breakout room. We want to listen and hear what you have to say, because they have something of value. Little 3-year-old junior has something of value to say. So when we sit around the dinner table, we're going to listen to that 3-year-old. We're going to listen to great grandma that brought him too. So it's just modeling that, because so few people have had that kind of healthy upbringing. And what I found out later when I discovered these 40 developmental assets is I grew up in a household where I had the 40 developmental assets. I had parents that loved me. I was in all kinds of activities where I was nurtured and supported by other caring adults. I was involved in a faith community. I was nurtured and cared for. And so when this horrible thing of incarceration hit me, I didn't totally crumble and fall apart. I had some stability in my life because I had those developmental assets that were ingrained in me. And that's why we're trying to ingrain those things in our children and our teens. So when we're all going to have adversity in our life, we're all going to have difficulties. And when those things happen, how are we going to help them to have the strength, the inner strength to continue to go on? And it comes from practice and just being around people that demonstrate and really are genuine in their love and their care.
Very nice. So you brought up, I mean, these 40 fundamental values multiple times. Can you name at least few of them? I don't know, not every all 40, but at least few of them which are important.
Oh, sure. Yeah. First one, I should have my list here.
Sure.
But anyway, it doesn't matter. I know them. Positive family communication, other caring adults, a safe environment, getting involved in school activities, having 1 or more hour a week in some kind of religious setting. It doesn't matter what religion it is, but we know that if you spend 1 hour or more, feeling empowered, having a sense of responsibility, that you know, kids want responsibility. You don't just let them sit around and play games, computer games all day long and not do anything. They need to have some chores. They need to have some things. You teach them, how are you going to be wise with your money and financial security? 20 of these are internal. How do you feel about yourself inside? And then 20 are external. So who are you are you involved with other people after school? Or are you just hanging out and there's no supervision at all? That's why sports and other activities, dance and music and all these other things that kids can get involved in are so important, because then it's putting other adults in your life that become mentors for them and become leaders and encouragers to them. And so for a lot of people that come up and grow up in very poor households and addicted parents and don't even know who dad is, it's that teacher, it's that coach, it's that instructor that encouraged them, that believed in them, that gave them that sense that I can make it. And so that's what we're trying to be there for people. People talk about when they come to Wings, it's their Wings family. Well, that's the biggest encourager to me that I could think of. When people think they're coming to their family, that means they're coming where they are loved, where they are cared for, where they are supported, and we're going to be there and we're going to help them no matter what. And we can do this from a distance through Zoom too. I mean, it's amazing how people that I've only met through Zoom, I see them now every week. We're starting to build a relationship, not like it would be if we were face to face, and we will be back face to face one of these years. But for right now, it is a way that we can connect and be there. And so they have this sense that people are there. They really do truly care about us. And we all need people like that in our lives, every single one. I'm sure you've had mentors and people that have cared about you, probably your parents that were there and encouraged you, maybe now a wife or children, but we all need those people in our lives. And so we need to find those people. And sometimes in some of these very unhealthy families, it isn't a parent. Maybe it is that teacher or somebody else, and we need to find those people for our folks. So that's what we try to do.
Very nice, very good points. I mean, for anyone, I would say, but not only for the families which are stressed out, even for in general. I mean, public. These are very valuable points. Do you want to share any stories, particular? I mean, which kind of touched your heart and our whole society, your organization, who you guys have helped?
I'll share a new one. I've got thousands of stories, but I'll share a new one. We just did on Saturday our Christmas toy pickup. And so it was being announced on a local radio station to donate toys and where to drop them off and everything. And this girl, Bethany was her name, heard this radio station and said, aha, I think I want to go volunteer with this organization because my dad was in prison. And when I was 7 years old, this is 20 years ago now, when I was 7 years old, my mom took me and my sisters and we went to a Wings family day. And they ended up giving us Christmas presents and we decorated cookies and we had so much fun, and all these people, they were so nice to us. And it just made all the difference for us. And I asked her to write this up for me because I thought I don't want to misinterpret her words or put words in her mouth that she didn't say. And she said she saw her mom smile at the Wings family day. And she said she hadn't seen her mom smile in a long, long time. And her mom was actually happy. And so it just touched my heart so much. So here is a new volunteer 20 years later, 7 years old when we touched her. And then she was proud to tell me that none of her siblings have ended up in prison, and she hasn't either. So she's not falling in that pattern. And that she said the only thing that she's gotten is one speeding ticket, and that's all she's had any dealings with the law. But her dad, unfortunately, has been in and out of prison her entire life, and he's still in prison right now. And so she really has never had a relationship with him. But because of us, it gave some hope. And then, of course, I've got just so many other stories of people that come to our program and they become successful. We've got one of our board members who spent 33 years in prison. And he got out and he came to our program right away. I'd heard about it. He's now one of our board members. He learned to fix everything in prison. I share his story in every prison I go to. He learned in 33 years how to be the ultimate handyman, how to fix plumbing, how to paint, how to texture, how to do floors, how to do heat, how to do, you name it. And so he came out and he started this very fancy handyman's company. And because who's going to hire a guy that's been in prison for 33 years? And I was one of the first to hire him because I got to know him. And he said, well, just pay me whatever you want. So people could pay him $1 an hour or $10 an hour or whatever. I think Gary's now making at least $50 an hour. And then, of course, he started building up, asking people, would you write a little review about what I did? And of course I told other people, and then they told other people and told other people, and now he has like 300 customers. I can't ever even get him to come to help me because he's so busy helping everybody else, which is just fine. But people, he came out, he was law abiding, he was hardworking, honest as the day is long. People give him his keys. I gave him the key to my house. Go in here, Gary, lock it up when you leave. I trust him. And he has proven himself over and over again and is very successful and has a very successful business now. So, I mean, there are just so many stories, so many times in prisons. In India, you're from India, and this was actually in Bangalore, I think. And I remember going into a juvenile facility, and we do pizza in America. Pizza, cookies, and punch. It's very easy. You could bring it in. But the leader in Bangalore said, these kids, they didn't think it ever tasted ice cream. And I said, never had ice cream. And so I'd never seen, it was like a thimble size. You know what I'm talking about because you're from India, but a tiny little container, probably no bigger than like a quarter, and probably very, very tiny. And so this leader went out and we bought ice cream to bring into these kids. And here they were. And most of them were just, they were thieves on the street. That's how come they got picked up, because they were pickpockets and maybe dealing drugs or something. And they were all tiny because they were so malnourished. And they looked like they were, probably 6, 7, 8 years old. And they were teenagers. They were so tiny. But to see these kids getting this little kind of like a Dixie cup, but a fraction of a Dixie cup, and putting in this little wooden spoon in it wasn't a spoon, it was tiny little stick really to put in, and to taste that ice cream and to have them just savor the cold in their mouth. They had never tasted anything like that. And so that was just a really wonderful memory that I have of bringing just a little bit of joy in to that particular prison there with all of those kids. And I've seen some pretty bleak prisons around the world, but if we could bring some joy and some happiness and some hope and that the knowledge that they don't have to have that be their life, they can get out. They could work hard. They should take advantage of every program that comes into a prison. They should try to learn from each other. They should teach each other how to read, teach each other math, teach each other any art skills, anything that they can do while they are in prison instead of just sitting there and letting every hour of the day pass by into another day, into another month, another year. That's just a waste of a lifetime. But to maximize every day of wherever they are in their life and to try to use it to better themselves. And they will, and they'll get out and they'll be successful. Because if they have that drive and that desire to have that positive view of the future, we will help them get there. And that's the ultimate goal for us, is to you get out and stay out and just help us keep more people out. We don't want anybody going back to prison.
Very nice. Any final words to the audience about your program?
Well,
or
I'm
how
just
someone
very
would like
grateful. Yeah, I'm very grateful to you and this opportunity to be able to share it, because you've got an audience that I certainly don't have. They could go to our website. It's Wings Fly. So I like to say this. It's Wings Fly, but the fly is For Life International. So it's FLI, but the abbreviation is wingsfly.org. and they can see everything that we're doing. They can go to our prison programming. They can go to our community educational programming. Anybody anywhere can take that information and run with it. They could call me. I answer my cell phone all the time. I'll give my cell phone out right now. It's area code 505-554-6698. And I'll repeat that if somebody's listening. 505-554-6698. And I will be happy to reach out to anybody anywhere in this world. Anybody that's hurting and doesn't think there's hope, there is hope. I'm a proof positive there is hope out there. Those of us with incarcerated loved ones can make it. None of my 4 boys, thank heaven, are in prison. And I hope that none of them ever got there, except to go with me into prison to do more family days and more educational programming. And if anybody is out there and you want to start a program like this in your community, give me a call, because there is a need anywhere and everywhere in the world. Big communities, small communities, inner cities, Bombay to Moscow to New York City to Albuquerque, New Mexico, Detroit, Michigan, where you are. It doesn't matter. There is a need everywhere, and we can help. And we are all human beings, and we are all children of God. And I believe that God wants the best for all of us, and that's what I want for everybody too. So thanks to anybody that's listening to this, and reach out to me and I'll help you in any way I can.
Thank you very much for coming on the show, and wish you all the best in whatever you do. And thank you.
Thank you so much. Bless you.